Hello, and welcome back to Let's Talk Boundaries. Today, I sit down with Staci Smith, a courageous woman whose journey will open your eyes to the crucial difference between offensive and defensive boundaries. You'll hear Staci share with raw honesty how she spent years suppressing deep anger rooted in childhood trauma. Listen in as Staci shares how she learned to manage her anger and reclaim it as her compass. Let's pause the music and dive in. Hello, this is Pamela Bird, your boundaries coach, and let's talk boundaries, shall we? We talk about so much more than boundaries on this show, but today we're really going to focus on one of the challenges that a lot of people have when it comes to really understanding what boundaries are, what they mean, how to use them, how to communicate them, and just some of the stereotypical views or beliefs that people have about boundaries. We're going to debunk those myths right now with my guest, Miss Staci Smith. Staci is a phenomenal woman that I met through our podcast group, and we did a two-part series where we talked about the little girl inside of us. And so you've got to go to her podcast. I'm going to share the link so you can go and take a look at those. But one of the things I love about Staci is that when we talked, she knew exactly what to pull out of me. Why does she do that? Because she's a hope empowerment coach. And what she does is she helps you to really pull out things that you didn't even know that were there. And that's what you did for me, Staci. You helped me really look at the things that were going on with inside of me and how to heal. And so let me just give you a little bit more information about Staci. She has 18 years of experience dedicated as a dedicated educator and school leader with 15 years in corporate management. She equips women to identify the little girl inside of them and to look at the triggers that people may not be aware of that are preventing them from walking in their full power. So, Staci, I just want to welcome you to Let's Talk Boundaries. And the topic we're going to talk about today is boundaries. Yes, we're going to talk about boundaries, and we're going to talk about whether we are on the offensive or the defensive when it comes to setting the right boundaries to do the things that we really, really need to do. So, Staci, welcome, and just tell people a little bit about who you are, how you came to do what you're doing right now, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you so much for having me, Pamela. It's a pleasure to be in connection with you online again for the third time. We've made this wonderful bond. And I came to do this work as I looked at my own spiritual walk and found myself in a place where I was still angry and I still had these unresolved issues from that I had to find out the source in my life. So I went back to my childhood. And so there was that one layer of it of saying, I'm still very, very angry and I don't understand why. Because I'm walking with the Lord and I think I'm doing, all the things for that healing to happen, but I hadn't really gone through what that was. And the way I decided that I wanted to be a life coach was really through an personal experience that I was invited to. It was a women life coach and it was amazing. And I heard something that just let me know that I could think of my circumstances differently. And I used what I learned as a life coach, mentoring the teachers that reported to me. And so I saw the beauty, how that mindset change and being heard and taking the time to just look inside made such a difference in my life and the life of those around me. So I said, hey, I can do this.
You can definitely do this. You are an amazing life coach. I like what you said about I was angry all the time. I followed Christ. I knew I had a personal relationship, but I was still angry all the time. And the fact that you chose to go back and look at your childhood. Tell us a little bit about that, because a lot of people feel that, and we're going to get to boundaries in a second, but this is actually a boundary, and I'll explain why. But a lot of people feel like, oh no, I'm good. I've healed from my past childhood traumas and I'm moving on. And then there are some people that say, I don't need to go back. I want to leave it right back where it was and I want to continue on. So how did your decision to go back impact your ability to do what it is that you're doing and helping so many women today?
Thank you. That's a great positioning because I was locked into a narrative that began through an incident when I was 7 years old. I was at school on the playground, the only Black child in school, and I was just verbally assaulted by three white boys one day. And it just jarred me to my core because I wasn't even interacting with them. I wasn't doing anything. I was playing by myself and I was happy and content in that space. And all of a sudden, I was bad and wrong. And then the perpetuation of that was being moved. Our family moved. My parents were like, no, no, this can't be your life. This is horrible. And we went to school, moved to another city where I could go to school with Black students, but they were bused to the school that I walked across the street and went to. So then you had out here, the hill and flatlands dynamics, which is like, the railroad tracks or wrong side of the town or whatever people want to call it. And so my socioeconomic existence caused me to be in a place where people had to ride a bus to get to. And so then I talked like a white girl. Oh, you're white on the outside, white on the inside, black on the outside. They called me an Oreo. I was like, I'm not a cookie. What are you talking about? I was a little girl at 7. I had no idea what that meant. And they would fight me or beat me up because I was like, I don't know how to fight. What are you talking about? Until I did. Because it was like, okay, enough of this crap. I'm done. And so that anger was the buildup of that I attributed going back to confusion first. That even as I was even thinking yesterday, I was like, I don't know what I did that day. I don't remember what happened when I was 7. I remember the days when I was 8 and up, 8 through 11, because it happened 3rd through 6th grade. And my so-called best friend would be the ringleader to fight me, and everybody would gather around her. So it was like everybody against me. Nobody was on my side that at least said anything or tried to stop it. And I just knew I can't go on like this. And as I talk about in my podcast and in my book and workbook, it was a lie that I wasn't lovable, just being me. So it reinforced a negative message that just showing up as myself was unacceptable here and unacceptable here. So now what do I do? How do I navigate? So that anger was the culmination of first confusion and fear and isolation and not knowing what to do, to now I have to defend myself and I never know if it's going to be a good day or a bad day. So I was a nervous wreck for 3 years. I was in the lowest math. We had SRA work packets. I was in the lowest SRA group probably the whole time. And I ended up getting my degree in math, which is just how God just shows you, I'm going to take you full circle, sweetheart. From a Black college, by the way. I graduated from Spelman. So it was like the whole corrective experience rolled into one. I just realized that just now as I say this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how do you think that experience in particular, because you talked a lot of manifestations or ramifications of that experience, how do you think you carried that with you into your adulthood, that anger and whatever else you carried?
Well, after that last fight when I beat the crap out of that girl and walked, and I was so mad and bad, I busted her lip. She spit on me. I pounded her some more, turned around and walked away. And from that point forward, I was like, ain't nobody ever gonna do that to me again. And by high school, I was the one that was like, I would stand up to any and everybody. And I'm 5'4", and I did not care how big they were. And they said, this girl is crazy. We're gonna leave her alone. Punch lockers, punch the bathroom door at home. I mean, not anger, rage. And at rage, I knew, even though I knew how to package it better when I got older, it was still, I could go there. It was still that level. I didn't fight as an adult, but I wanted to. I dreamed about fighting when I was in middle school. That's how bad it was.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting about this is that I had anger too, but I It's just to talk about the difference between trauma that you experience and how the brain works differently in people and how they react or respond to that trauma, not only when they're little girls, but when they're adults. And a lot of times we fail to set the right boundaries because of some situations that we experience in our past that we bring with us, which I call the residual effects of that childhood trauma. And we act them out in different ways. Mine was I would let people bully me. I wouldn't hit back, I wouldn't fight back, but I was angry. And so as became an adult, what did I do? How did that manifest? It manifests, I internalized it. And so I did things where you externalize them, I internalize them. And so that just goes to show that people respond very differently to the childhood trauma that they do not address and they don't heal from. So let's talk about, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that because it really helps people to get a foundation of where you were. But what we're going to talk about is the internal versus the external. What we're going to talk about is boundaries on the defensive versus the offensive. So you mentioned that you had this belief that boundaries were something that would put you on the defensive. Tell me a little bit about that.
And I really just literally thought of this in preparing to talk to you because boundaries were a thing that I thought of were for if I crossed up somebody else's boundaries. This is my first experience of boundaries. I studied boundaries at one point, and it was like, okay, if I cross this person's boundaries because they didn't articulate them, I felt at a disadvantage. Unspoken boundaries is what Townsend and Cloud call it. And so I knew about boundaries from that perspective. But it was when I was crossing somebody else's boundary and I got a reaction for it, a negative reaction for it. So they were like, don't do that. But they didn't say, don't do that before I did it. So it was like, now I'm like grasping at straws because how am I supposed to know if you didn't tell me? That's not my fault. So again, it's like, again, a defensive response. And now I'm in trouble now. And the whole little thing is, as that little girl and that whole life thing was like, you're bad or wrong. Just showing up, just being you. So I was just doing what I thought to do. And now I crossed your boundaries. So boundaries to me, even in studying it through a Christian study program, was still skewed for me. And today, I was years old when I realized I didn't set boundaries. I heard as we were talking even, my boundary was, okay, you hit me, I'm not going to be hit again. But it was still a defensive in that way, physically, emotionally, every kind of way. I had an emotional boundary, but it was not one I was intentional, that I owned, that I possessed, that I felt empowered to say, don't do this to me. Because again, I don't know, my voice, my words were a place of being challenged and questioned and made fun of. So I wasn't gonna say anything. But I was going to show you, and I was strong, muscles, and I had muscles. I used to do pull-ups and everything way back in elementary school. So I got guns. I still got some muscle. And so I used that physical strength as a boundary, but just even now, not intellectualizing it and internalizing and owning that I could say, this is my boundary because I know me and love me and want to protect me enough to tell you, to communicate to you. Because when you go to physical, there's no communication. So that's why I was in a constant state of confusion because I'm very strategic in my thinking and intellectual in my processing and I can be spontaneous at the same time. So it was like this, I was just in this constant disconnect between, I know how to respond this way, but I never even thought that there could be another way to consider boundaries.
Yeah, because oftentimes we don't realize that an unhealthy boundary is based on a reaction to an emotion that we're feeling, which is a lot of time, depending on how we grew up, can be very, very reactive to something that we went through. And like you always help people to understand is their triggers, and it's a trigger to something that made you feel a certain way. And when you encounter something that makes you feel like you're not important, like you did when you were little, you get angry.
Yeah. It made me feel, when I feel unsafe, when I
Yes.
felt safe, that was what happened.
Okay, so that's a good point. Let's talk about safe, feeling safe, because that defensive boundary is based on you protecting yourself from something that's coming at you. It could be from a trigger. It could be from a retaliation. And what I talk about in my book is the drama triangle. It could be from the position within the drama triangle, which is the persecutor. The persecutor is someone who comes and always finds wrong in anything that you've said or anything that you've done. But the persecutor will not, as you're in your example, will not communicate to you that that's what their boundary is. So they'll come after you for a boundary they didn't communicate, that you didn't know anything about. And then that puts you in a defensive mode because it's a trigger for something that happened to you in your past. See how it all works together? It's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
But now you understand as an adult, you've done the work, you've gone back and identified the experiences so that you can heal from those experiences. So now when those triggers come, and I think you and I talked about this on your last podcast, is that they no longer are as painful because you understand them and now they become a learning tool for you. So when you think about the learning tool of that trigger, now you don't react. Now you
Right.
respond, and you respond in a way that's protecting you, but it's not reactionary. It's more of a response that you've considered. And that's where the not the defensive, but the offensive boundaries come in knowing that you do have a right to set boundaries because of who you are. So talk about that flip for you. Then you finally decided, you know what? You know exactly what an offensive boundary is for you.
I think the biggest thing is owning my space. First, just inside my heart. Because what I found is even though I was reacting externally, the energy and the negativity of being in that constant state of defensive reaction also affected my health internally. So internally, those go into your organs. I had high blood pressure at 17 years old. My kidneys failed in my early 30s. And it was a process. Yesterday was actually the 17-year anniversary of a kidney transplant from a living donor. So for 13 years, I went from my diagnosis that my kidneys were failing till the day of the transplant. So we're talking like 30 years ago. I had a child and went to the doctor and found out that my kidneys were failing. So my body was attacking my kidney. So that energy, that anger, that rage never went anywhere but inside of me, even though I fought, even though I verbalized and cuss you out. It's still, to be in that state affected me.
Yeah, it was still inside of you.
Yes. Yes.
And it was
So it's
toxic.
toxic, negative, just literally killing me.
So that's what people don't realize. A lot of people don't realize is that toxicity will ruin you. It can kill you. And thank God you were able to have that identified and to have that transplant, because otherwise there could have been a whole different outcome on that, an early death. And we don't understand where these are. A lot of times we say, God, but they die so young. They die so young. Deal with the issues inside of you, whatever it is that you were masking or hiding from that happened in your past, and realize that it's something that's affecting your life, your health, your well-being. There's no telling what can happen, what trigger will happen, or all that's manifesting in your body as a result of that. So I'm glad you said that. Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people may not realize that if they try to bury it under the rug or something, it's gonna manifest in one way or another.
So many of the autoimmune diagnoses that are tied to stress is not what happens to you, but how you react to it. And even cancer are tied to some of those negative types of emotions so many times. And these are metabolic conditions where our internal cells are activated by something that's happening.
So if you're listening to this and you've got some challenges, some times when you feel like I just can't go on, or I'm so angry all the time, or I'm depressed, or I feel like I used to do like compulsive eating
Mm-hmm.
to and for my anger, instead, remember I said the difference that you would lash out, I would internalize that and I would eat compulsively. I'm talking just shoving food in my mouth until I was ready to throw up, just because I was so angry and didn't know what to do with that anger,
Yeah.
because I had not resolved my childhood trauma issues. So I understand exactly what you're saying. So if you're listening to this, if you're feeling any of those things, knowledge is key. Find out how your pain can be manifesting within you, so that that's usually, you know what that is though, Stacy? That's usually when you know better, you do better. And when you understand what the ramifications can be for what you're doing, you then become motivated to do something about it. And here's another thing: when we are, as women, we're used to caring for other people. We're used to caring for other people, but we don't care for ourselves. We just don't pay attention to the things that we need. That's where self care became critical a couple years ago, about taking care of yourself. But one of the things about self care is educating yourself. So, how can you help people to understand the importance of educating based on what you just said, so they help themselves heal and move forward?
There's this whole process that when we're taking care of everybody else and not taking care of ourselves, we're also not feeling our feelings. We're not tapping in. We're not listening. I mean, what you shared with me and taught me about the different types of journaling is a way to let yourself, your inner self, your little girl, have a voice, and to also sit still and hear from God, from the Holy Spirit, as you meditate and pray, to see yourself in a way that is apart from the busyness and the constant motion that it's almost a generational training. I want to say a curse.
Mhm.
We had no choice as Africans enslaved in America. We had no choice. There was no stopping, resting, listening. How you feel? Am I alive or not? Just pure survival. And to perpetuate living like we're in survival mode
Mm.
is the curse.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, to know better is to do better. The rest
Yeah.
is movement, to be still, and it's okay. The word says, be still and know that I am God.
Mhm.
You can't know that if you're constantly moving, because you're playing God. You're taking the action, you're making all the effort. And we're conditioned. If I don't do it, it won't get done. How many people have been told that or said that? So the empowerment comes from being aware of what is it that I'm afraid to let go of. I go back to the lies that become the truth. If I go on through life believing I can't just show up as I am, or I live in fear, as we talked about with you, we're going to live differently. The empowerment comes by saying, is that really true?
Mm.
Is that a story my little girl had to take on because she was doing her best to help me survive? And I commend her for that, but I am not 7 years old anymore. And when I realized at 52 that my 7-year-old was running my life, because whenever I had that feeling, I was reacting like I did when I was 7. I knew that was unacceptable. So I share that when I'm coaching, when I'm talking to women on the podcast, that once you can see that, it's time to take charge. It's time to be on the offensive, to be strategic, to be intentional. And because offensive is not, can be considered combative. It's not offensive. It's being strategic and saying, I get to say, I don't, it's happening. I get to say what's happening. I'm not just reacting to what happened. And now I'm just in response mode. I'm going to be proactive rather than reactive.
That is good. That is so good. And I like what you said about the difference between the offensive versus and reactive versus being strategic. So that puts you in a different position. It gives you an opportunity to plan out your boundaries before you even get into a situation. So now, instead of being defensive, how do you plan out the boundaries that you're going to set and how you communicate those boundaries?
Being able to know what my what I want, how I want to be treated, because others' treatment was the big thing, right? I show up in spaces differently. Having had set that intention, I feel an elevation in just here's how I show up in the world. And your response to that is that's yours. I don't have to have any reaction to that as long as you don't touch me. I'm good. I don't know that I would fight, but I just know I'm not going to have nobody just, And even at that, I've been touched inappropriately by a man, and it was like so shocking. And it was at such an inappropriate place that I didn't react right away, other than just to get away. And so even the subtleties of boundaries, I knew it wasn't what I wanted, but I didn't show up to say, hey, everybody put your hands on me. Because I had on this beautiful, sexy red dress. And I was like, that didn't give you permission. The problem was not mine. The problem was outside of me. And so the way you show up with that intentionality of my boundary is I expect to be treated with kindness. I will treat you with kindness. If you don't have the capacity to respond back, I'm not going to not show up unkind to the next person. That has nothing to do with me. That was your issue. And so where we make it our issue when it's really not, we give away our power.
Mm-hmm.
And allow situations to disempower us.
Oh, that's good. That's good. We allow situations to, oh, wow. Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. You said something that was critical. And I don't even know if you realize that you said it, but you said in order to be able to stand up and be intentional with your boundaries, you got to know who you are. And how do you do that? And, we talked about going back and looking at the things that are triggering us and to know where the foundation is of that instead of just ignoring it, causing us to do things. But what if you're afraid? You're afraid to go back there because it was so painful and you're going to end up having that pain again. Because this is the foundation of setting the right boundaries, being more intentional and being on the offensive versus the defensive on a boundary. How do you do that when you're afraid?
Slowly and carefully. And really with grace and patience, because it is scary. And this is where you have to console your little girl, to go back and ask her, what does she need? Did she need to be held? Did she need to be told she was safe? And having, like you talk in your journaling, having that conversation with her to say, thank you for doing what you did, but now I'm going to take over and you can go be a little girl. You can go do what little girls do. And almost like I've heard this day, parenting yourself back through that process. So you go back to it and say, if I was the parent now, this is what I know she needs. So I'm going to do this for her. And so now the stronghold that's emotional and spiritual, because you're going to do this in partnership with God. I'm going to give you this because I need healing in this area and I'm scared. I'm scared it's going to hurt again. I'm scared it's going to be the same. Intellectually, as an adult, you should see it differently. Even to the place where you say, that person couldn't love me any better, couldn't parent me any better, couldn't show up for me in marriage any better because of their brokenness. And so it wasn't at me. It wasn't to me. They didn't do it to me. They did what they could with what they knew to do. So again, now it's not about me being bad or wrong. So that perspective shift out of we're afraid because we're afraid we're going to feel like we felt when we were 7. But I'm not 7 anymore. And what made it so shocking at 7 was because I didn't understand what was going on. And I didn't have anybody to tell me because I didn't have the words to ask for what I needed. I need to know when I'm safe. It makes me emotional. I need to know when I show up in the world, I'm not going to be attacked for just being me. I need to know showing up as just being me is good enough, better than good enough, more than enough. Because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I apply the word throughout my conversations with myself, with my clients in the healing journey. Because I was always loved by God and he was always there for me, even when I didn't know it. And to grab onto that and to hold onto that and to relish that. It's like, oh yeah, it was bad, but I was going to be okay because I have the story to tell, the lives to touch, the testimonies to share, like you and I have done. And to the people listening to us, there's somebody else who can relate to this story or any parts of it, or that insight that says, now let me apply it to my story. That healing comes because we can face a fear knowing that we're not alone. Most of the time we're afraid because we think we're all alone. But if we're not, there's hope.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And you are courageous. You are empowered. You are beautiful. And not only you, Staci, but everyone that's listening, understand that if you feel like I'm afraid, allow that vulnerability to come to the surface. And you ain't got to be hard. You ain't got to be all hard. And let me just give you a clue. If you're out there and you believe that everybody's attacking you, everybody's got something against you, and you walk on the defensive, then there is something inside of you and that little girl that needs to be healed, and it needs to be addressed, because we don't need to walk like that. Staci is evidence of that she was fighting all the time. Why was she fighting? She was fighting to protect herself from something that she had no control over. Right now, you have control over your life. You have more control than you even know. And it doesn't come out fighting. Staci can tell you, not anymore. She doesn't need to do that. She has a power within herself, in her energy, in her how she shows up, that people aren't going to try to come against her boundaries, because her boundaries are all around her, and they're loving. They're not defensive. They're offensive. They're intentional. And they created her to be exactly the person that she is today. So don't be afraid. If you're afraid, do it anyway. That shows that you have the courage. And once you do that, you'll have courage to set any boundary and to communicate who you are and what your worth is to anybody that you run into. Not only that, they're going to see it. When you look at Staci, you see that she's got confidence, and you're not going to dare cross her boundaries, because she's made it clear. She's made it clear. So anything you want to add to that before I move on, Staci?
No, I just want to say I love just that whole framing and phrasing, because our listeners need to know you're here today because this message is for you. God does not want you to stay in that spirit of fear, but to have the courage, to have the boldness to walk in the intentionality of saying, it's not always fun. It's not always easy. It hurts a little bit to go back and remember what hurt, especially if you suppressed it and your brain did what it needed to do at the time because it was too much. Some things are too deep, and maybe you need therapy also. Coaching partnered with therapy is powerful, because there might be some things that need deeper attention. But our message is that of loving yourself, allowing the vulnerability, the innocence of the little girl to come back. Think of what she liked, what made her smile, what brought her joy, what games she liked to play, as a catalyst to say, as we grow up, we think we have to carry the weight of the world and be tough and take care of everybody else all at the same time. And that's just not true, not safe, and wears us down. So it's just a word of encouragement. Ladies, you don't have to go through this like that anymore.
And thank you for sharing that, Staci. Another thing that just came to me, if you're afraid, that means that little girl is looking for attention. Because as an adult, you're not afraid, but it's the little girl part of you that's afraid. And she's the one that needs you to help her to not be afraid anymore. So Staci, tell me about, you've published some books. Tell us a little bit about that and what is it about?
I have, the first book I was in was actually an anthology, and where I was sharing the story of my kidney journey, and it was Courageous Women Facing the Storm. And so I was a contributing author. There were 12 of us. And that was my first sharing of the story of my kidney transplant journey. And recently I've created a workbook called No More Lies. And it's a guided workbook and healing journal with prompts, but to really just walk you through the process. And there's 4 stages: finding your little girl, especially when she's hiding; finding out what the lies were that she believed, because they become the truth. They get distorted. The lies get distorted and switch places with the truth, because as a little girl, you just do what you have to understand the life around you, that confusion space that I talked about. And then you look for the truth. What is the offsetting truth? I'm not enough. I'm more than enough through God who strengthens me, through Christ who strengthens me. And then walking into your power and your purpose. So releasing that and functioning in the empowerment stage of what has God called you to do? And you know He's put in you to do, and you keep getting stuck. Whether it's being an entrepreneur, whether it's writing a book, whether it's doing a podcast, whether it's starting your business, because that is still in you and the calling is in you, whether it's in a ministry area, physically in a church, and you still just can't get past that hurdle. There's something else that needs to be attended to inside of your little girl. Like Pamela said, that fear, that doubt, that second guessing, that I'm not enough just keeps coming up. And that's a message that's in the back of your head that maybe you never say out loud, but it's in there to go and tend to that. So that workbook is designed with prompts. There's 90 days of just rehearsing that truth. There's a 30-day rehearsing the truth, and then 90 days of just walking through the steps with journaling prompts. So this is really a 6 months or 3 months of just how do you reset yourself to walk into going from where is my little girl? Who is she? What scared her? What did she believe? All levels. And it's just pray through it, cry through it, take your time, give that voice. That little girl can come out. It's like when you coax out a little scared kitten from under the couch. They have to know they're safe. Mm-hmm. She needs to know she is safe and loved. There's space in there to celebrate and honor her, because she did what she needed to do so that you're still here today as a little girl. Now you're grown up.
So if you're listening to this, if you're working towards something and you want to do something, you want to do your purpose, and you just, like Staci said, you're just frustrated, you're running into all these roadblocks, the steps that she has laid out gives you the progression of what needs to happen in order to do that. Too many times we put the cart before the horse. We're going to pursue our purpose, so we go head on. But then those things that stop us are probably the areas that need to be worked out in the workbook that Staci has created, because you got to go in the steps that are necessary in order to fulfill that. So don't put the cart before the horse. This is something that Staci has created because she's been there. She's, as an educator, she knows how to do it so that you're able to progress in a way where there's peace along the way. And you are allowing yourself to heal through that little girl, because that little girl is you. And if you want to do what God placed you on this earth to do, you got to get the healing, and God's going to make that available to you. And then as you move forward, as you go through this, I love that 90-day period that you're giving them to actually manifest that and bring that to life and see how it applies to their lives. Because guess what? That's where your healthy boundaries come in. Because it's very difficult to set a boundary if you don't know what you're working towards. Those are the defensive ones. Right. But when you know what you're working towards, that's when your boundaries become offensive, and those are healthy. So if you get a chance, I encourage you, get this workbook that Staci has. What's the name of it, Staci? I'm going to put a picture of it in here.
It's No More Lies, Healing Workbook and Journey. And
wow.
Journal. I keep saying journey because it's a journey. You're going to journal through your journey.
Through your journey. Journal your journey. Absolutely. That's one of the hashtags I used to use. Journal your journey, and you have protection throughout that. But make a decision that, you know what, something's got to give. And that something got to give is me. It's not everybody else. That's where you're defensive. It's the offensive. It's me. So I can show up as who I'm supposed to be, not pretending like I'm somebody just because of something I experienced that I'm not willing to deal with. Staci's giving you an opportunity to work through it in a safe environment. And if you need somebody to help you through it, Staci can help you through it. I can help you through it. You choose based on who you connect with. but take a look at her podcast and really get a sense of who she is. When I did those interviews with her, I knew exactly who she was. And I'm so honored that you are a part of this podcast, Let's Talk Boundaries, and that you're in my life. And she's in California. I'm in Atlanta. We get a chance to meet next month. So I'm just excited, and I hope you get excited about finding out what Staci, who she is, what she does, and who she can be to you, and how she can help you to be the catalyst and the change that you need to make sure that you are doing the things that you need to do. You understand the boundaries you need to set, why you need to set them, because of who you are and who God created you to be. Get in touch with that little girl. I'm telling you, she's waiting. If you're on the defensive, she's waiting for you. Staci, thank you so much for being on Let's Talk Boundaries. Do you have any parting words for our guests before you leave?
First of all, thank you for the honor of being in your space. And it's been so wonderful to be your guest. And ladies, your little girl is waiting for you. My first podcast, what I said is, what would you do if you saw a little girl crying really, really hard? And then what if you found out that little girl was you? And there's a picture that I saw that there's a woman well put together looking in a mirror, but look, the reflection is a little girl sobbing. And she's seeing how she really is feeling inside, but she's got to hold it all together. If you can resonate with that, there's work. She's calling you. She needs you. Don't be afraid to take the step to help her.
Amen. Amen. This was a download. I'm telling you, we prayed before this and God showed up. Thank you, Staci, for sharing. As we depart, just please remember to share, subscribe, and like, and leave your comments below on how this has impacted you today, how this has influenced you, or just any thoughts that you have. And as you subscribe, keep in mind that you will be notified of any future podcasts that come up, because wouldn't it be a shame if there was a podcast that you missed and it was exactly what you needed to hear? Staci, thank you for being here. And as always, thank you for listening. And in the meantime, this is Pamela Bird, your boundaries coach, and let's talk boundaries, shall we?